Welcome to the I Will Aim podcast. Our episode for today is titled Tricycle Effect, and I have the author Dane, who's actually going to be our guest today. Let me introduce Dane. Dane is a former U.S. Air Force commander. He's also an author of The Tricycle Effect, a book that focuses on your team and embarks on a transformative journey to cultivate leaders of characters. He was the CEO of five companies with over 30 years of corporate and business experience. Finally, he owns a gymnastic gym with his wife developing the leaders of tomorrow. Welcome, Dane.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let me start with the first question. Can you share your journey?
Sure. You mentioned that I had a gymnastics training center. My wife and I both operate a professional gymnastics club, and we've done that now for 35 years. And a lot of what we are and what we do today actually originated back in our high school years when we were both gymnasts. I was actually a wrestler, got hurt in wrestling, and so I went out for gymnastics because my pole vault coach was a gymnastics coach. And that's where I met my wife. So she was a junior in high school, I was a senior, and then I went to first year of college and then followed her to college after she graduated from high school. And so we've been proponents and lovers of gymnastics ever since we were very young, and focused primarily on not just building gymnastic skills and helping kids to be able to be better gymnasts technically, but also helping them grow professionally with people skills like communication, teamwork. And then, of course, with my Tricycle Effect book, really focusing on educating and growing them in character, right? Trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, empathy, loyalty, and so forth. So it's been a great journey.
Thank you for sharing your journey. Let me ask you the next question. What's the pivotal moment that inspired you into exploring character-based leadership in your writing?
I don't know if there was one particular moment. There's been lots of moments over the years, but I grew up in a household where my dad really focused on leadership, and he was a advocate of character since as far back as I can remember. I tell people all the time that we as adults are just big kids. We're little and we grow and we have our normal kind of years of productivity and so forth, and then we start to age and we go back to being young again in terms of not being able to care for ourselves and so forth. So that journey is an interesting process because as I was growing up, my dad was in the military and he really focused on being honest and trustworthy and helping me understand that reputation is the most important thing that you can give to the world.
I think that's true. I think reputation is truly the most important thing, right? I think that's the one that precedes you. I think in everything that you do, I think if you have good reputation, people want to work with you.
Yeah,
Then my next question.
absolutely. And one of the things, if I can share one more thing with that, Will, I'm just now finishing a certification from a company in Minneapolis, St. Paul that actually measures the gap between your character, who you think you are, and who others perceive you to be. So I've never seen anyone actually measure character, and it's pretty hard to do that. So it's not proof positive, but at least it gives us some measurable behavioral kind of activities to be able to help us understand the people in my organization or my family or even in the gym, how my gymnasts perceive me in reputation and not just who I think I am, right? Because too often we're biased on our own. So,
Well, that's a hallmark of a great leader who actually looked further into how to see how good they are as a leader. And therefore, this exercise that you're going through, getting your certification, is a way of validating how good you are as a leader or how authentic you are as a leader. That's really, truly impressive. What are the top three character traits or values you believe are essential for effective leadership? And why do you prioritize them?
yeah, so there isn't really necessarily a number one, number two, number three.
Mm,
However, I can tell you that love precedes all of them. You could probably take every one of the 6 or 7 that we use in the gym: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, loyalty, empathy, and actually tie all of those back to love. And, probably over this last couple of years with the COVID and all of the things that we had to do to be able to get through that time frame, be isolated. A lot of us remained at home. Even when I was teaching at the university, I was teaching from home and that kind of thing. It was obvious that all of those things were all encompassed in a couple of maybe things you could probably formulate with the word compassion, caring, empathy, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and feel what they're feeling. And even today, we have a lot of nurses in our gym with their kids, and they'll tell you that many of the medical facilities are struggling with empathy, the ability to feel what others are feeling. And it isn't, I don't even instigate or initiate a lot of the conversations. They do, because they know that I'm talking and teaching and coaching on character. And they'll almost always bring up the word empathy. I just had another nurse yesterday I hadn't seen for years bring up empathy when we were grocery shopping. So it's something that's really important to people, but yet most people don't focus on those character skills. And I call them character skills, not traits. And they're not just values, but they're actually what is our character composed of, right? And if we care about others, if we can put ourselves in other people's shoes, if we do a better job of being fair and trustworthy and respectful, then we have better character and others will respect us better. I think we'll have a better reputation. But most importantly, people will really understand that you do authentically and genuinely care about. I like it that John Maxwell says, and I think others have said similar things. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so, I used that on my Senate campaign runs when I was out there, because it really wasn't about the party. It was about caring for the people. How do I represent the people, right? It's the same thing in business. How do I care for my customers, right? We call it customer care, but a lot of times people don't think about the word care. They're just trying to satisfy the customer and not really care for the customer. And there's a whole different kind of world there between those two words, care and satisfy.
It was interesting when you said the first word you said up the characteristic was love. And that kind of opened my mind because I never really equate love to leadership. I do equate caring. Caring is absolutely, it would be like my top one, right? Caring, empathy, those are my top one. But I never really thought about love to be one of those. But if you think about, as I thought about the things that you were mentioning, well, you could only care if you could only care more and be more empathetic if you do things in the spirit of love, right? And that's kind of like, wow, it's an eye opener for me that I should think about love with leadership, because in the past I was like, okay, I start with caring and empathy and then I go from there, right? Like, but now you're like, wow, when you were saying love, I was like, oh, that's very interesting. I've never thought about that. Thank you
If
for
you take
sharing that.
yeah, absolutely. If you take that one step further, a lot of people will talk about servant leadership and how they need to serve others. And serving others means that we have to have a particular character skill called humility, right? Not that you're putting yourself below someone, but that you will put their needs first. And that goes along with a lot of the other words, but really that drives right straight back to love. Do I care and love the people that are around me, the people that I serve? And there's so much involved with that. I think we get so caught up in our daily technical activities at work and so forth that we forget about people skills. And sometimes we bring those in, like different organizations train different skills like teamwork or communication or leadership. But very few actually, maybe it's a courage thing, but actually are bringing in education to be able to increase the character skills. And if they did, the entire culture would change. And so it's exciting to think about the fact that you could change a culture because you care for your people more and not because you did something technically to solve something, right?
Next question I have: can you narrate a real life scenario where you observed someone demonstrating a remarkable character based leadership, and what was the outcome?
Yeah, so a really, really good example of that is when I was in Turkey. I spent 5 years in Turkey in the Air Force. And one of the people that came to a chapel meeting one time, because when you're going to church, you don't have your uniforms on, right? I had no idea who this person was, but I shared a prayer request afterwards that I'd been asked to be the chief of maintenance for all the communication electronics throughout the entire country of Turkey. Now, most people would think, well, that's great, you're getting a promotion. The problem was is that the person that was in that seat and had been in that seat for years was 2 ranks above me and
Wow.
had another 15 years of experience than what I had. I was only a 6-year captain, and yet this was a colonel slot. The person who was asking me to do that job was President Reagan's communications director out of the White House. So it was really concerning to me. How are people going to look at me? I don't have the rank. I don't have the years of experience, but I did have the understanding and I did care about my people. And that's what this person out of the White House really understood, is that I could work with people in a way that others he had not seen before. So, but I was really concerned. And so I asked for prayer based on the fact that I was making this big decision. And this person came up to me afterwards and said, I'd be happy to meet with you. Just come over to my office and I'll sit down and I'll do my best to give you what I can to help you make this decision. So I went over to the office. I got there. I had to sign into this building, and all of a sudden I saw there's guards with machine guns around, and I saw this set of stairs that was going up, and just plush red carpet, big wide stairway, and I was like, wow, where am I at here, right? I had only been downstairs because some of my work centers are downstairs, but here I am upstairs. And when I said that I was meeting with this person, the entire place went quiet. And then all of a sudden, everybody started scurrying around, and this person made a phone call. And then all of a sudden, I saw this person walking that I had met at prayer meeting, walking down the steps of these red plush stairs, right? And he had me come up to his office. And so I followed him up, and boy, everybody was snapping to attention. It was pretty clear he had a lot of authority and he was pretty high ranking. And actually, as it turned out, he was the highest ranking Air Force officer in terms of position in the entire country. And
Wow.
so he asked me to come in his office. It was the biggest office I've ever seen, the largest table. And he said, here, have a seat right here on the couch next to the door. And then he walked all the way across his room to get his Bible on the desk and brought it back. And he sat down across the couch from me, and he shared a few verses with me, and then told me that it really isn't about rank. It's not about position. It's about whether or not you lead your team well. Can you serve your people? Do you care about your people? And so he started using these character words, right?
Wow.
And he brought them to life with a lot of Old Testament scripture, which was really interesting. And so he was just encouraging me. He wasn't telling me to take the job. He was encouraging me that don't let the things like rank or position or authority hold you back. Your people are your backbone. They're the most important part of your organization. Let them do their job, and you'll find out that your job is much easier. And so we prayed, and then I left, and I thanked him for his advice and his wisdom and maturity, and I took that job. And for the next 2 years, I served my people. I never had to worry about any links being down or computers or networks going out. My people took care of all of that. So my job, as he had helped me understand, was to take care of my people. Their job was to take care of the technical or the mission. And it worked perfect. And so that was a great example of someone who was leading with character. Didn't matter whether it was rank or position. And he allowed me to be able to come into his life so he could mentor me because he cared about me as a person. So,
Well, thank you for sharing that story. It's really impressive. Thank you. And it's also a demonstration of how great that person is as a leader, right? It makes
absolutely.
you
It
feel
was
comfortable and welcome.
yep,
That doesn't happen
absolutely.
often.
Well,
That doesn't happen often.
yep.
My next question for you are, what are some of the common challenges leaders face when striving to embody strong character traits? and how can they overcome this obstacle to grow personally and professionally?
Well, let me go back first and kind of introduce the tricycle effect if I
Yeah.
can. In the tricycle, the big wheel is the wheel on the front. Most of us, as I said before, as adults, we're just big kids. But when we were little, we rode big wheels or tricycles, right? Before we could really ride a two-wheel bicycle. And that big wheel on the front is bigger than the back two wheels. And I oftentimes say all the spokes on the front wheel are the different character skills. And I call them skills like trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, loyalty, empathy, love. And, on bicycles, the spokes used to be able to tweak those spokes to make sure that the wheel stayed true when you rode it, right? It didn't wobble.
Mm, mm,
And so a lot of it was more technical in past days. Today, we don't even think about the spokes much. Nobody really tunes their spokes. But we do need to tune our character skills. The back two wheels on the tricycle, I call the competence wheels. One of them is the technical wheel, and the other one is the people skill wheel. People skills like leadership, teamwork, communication, critical thinking, problem solving. And then the seat on the tricycle is what I call the seat of courage, to make the right decision at the right time for the right reason. And if you think on a tricycle, the handlebars are connected to the front wheel and the pedals are connected to the front wheel.
mm.
So you get your direction and your momentum in life from your character wheel. But you're making those decisions as to how fast you're going forward, backward, what direction you're going, and all that with the courage in the seat, right? The problem is most people are triking around on a tricycle with a big technical wheel in the back, a much smaller people skill wheel, and an almost non-existent character wheel on the front, right? And so to get a really balanced ride, and balanced is a gymnastics term, right? To get a really good balanced ride, you need those two wheels in the back to be about the same size,
Mm,
and that character wheel in the front to be the size that it's supposed to be as a tricycle, right?
mm.
But mostly you need the courage to be able to make those right decisions, right? So in terms of just being able to think about, how that tricycle rides and so forth is important, because too often people don't have the courage to actually bring up things with character. So when you ask me that question, it's a great question, because the number one thing that people don't want to talk about, most of us have heard it, don't talk about sex, politics, that kind of thing. But in reality, it's important that we talk about character and character ethics. I just talk about it as character because if I say to someone ethics, there's all kinds of definitions of ethics. But if I focus in on the character skills, like we've talked about with those spokes on the front wheel, it's so much easier to have a conversation with someone about empathy or caring or respect. If you want to be more trustworthy, you got to practice trustworthiness. If you want to be more respectful, you got to practice respect. If you want to be more fair, you got to practice
Yeah.
fairness, and so forth. You want to be more responsible, you need to practice responsibility. The problem is, and the challenge is, that we don't want to have those discussions, because a lot of times they're the tough discussions, and we don't feel, you could call it imposter syndrome or whatever, but we don't feel we're perfect. So why should we be talking to someone else about character, right? But if we're leading with character first, just that statement alone really helps us understand that we're not perfect. We're on our own journey of learning to grow with character. And so, because I'm not perfect, I can accept the imperfections in myself and others as well, and we can grow together in character. And I think too often people look at character and ethics kind of thing as a way to be able to make people feel smaller, right? And a lot of times that causes dissension and polarization and all that kind of thing, when in reality, character should be bringing us together. Especially if we think of love as that hinge, that hub on the front wheel, and all those character skills around it with those spokes tie into that hub of love, right?
Yeah.
So that's, I think that courage to be able to lead with character first through the tricycle effect is probably the key element to that.
Thank you for sharing that. How does one practice character-based leadership influence their team dynamics, collaboration, and overall performance of an organization?
That's a great question. And let me give it to you in terms of my gymnastics training center, okay? A
Mm.
lot of people
Yes.
think, well, you're training these kids all the way through high school. What's that got to do with business, right? Well, a lot of people do tie the idea that you have sports helping you grow so that you can be prepared for your career or things in life later on, right? I think too often people probably try to compartmentalize things. Sports is over here, business is over here, family is over here. But the one thing that ties them all together is character. And oftentimes I'm asked by people, I don't get how you can do so much, Dane. You still run 5 companies. You have a gymnastics training center where you coach and you go to competitions on weekends, and you still do all your leadership training and management, that kind of thing, coaching other people in companies. How do you do all that? And I said, there's one common thing that ties it all together, and that's the character. And in the back of our gym, we have 6 pillars that hang down in banners: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, loyalty. And whenever we have a character teaching moment in the gym where someone, maybe we told them to do 10 pull-ups, and so the 2 girls that are maybe teamed together to do their station together come back from their pull-ups, and I say, hey, did you guys both do your 10 pull-ups? They both say yeah, and then one girl says, no, she only did 8. Oh, so now we have a character teaching moment. And it's important because the other kids know that you'll hold them to account, and that accountability is an important part of character skills as well, right? So whether it's in the gym, whether it was in my IT company that I had for 30 years, whether it was in my Air Force career, even managing and leading the entire team across the entire country of Turkey, the whole key was to make sure that people knew I cared about them, right? So that's it. We've got to infuse more character skills into our environment, whether it's family, sports, business, wherever it happens to be. And when we do that, we'll get better engagement from people. We will get better response from people. People will be more open to speaking with you, especially if you're a good listener, and all of that. And I tell people all the time, I had another discussion the other day with someone, listen and silent both have exactly the same letters and the same number of letters. They're just rearranged. So if we're a good listener, we need to be silent and not listening to reply, right? And so a lot of the character skills are all about putting yourself in the other person's shoes and asking them questions to really understand them. And I'm still learning that. I'm not perfect. I told all my university students, sorry to disappoint you. This professor is not perfect. And I want you to call me coach because it's a two-way street and we're both growing still. So
I think what I like about what you said is, in essence, character become not only a teachable moment, but also a show of caring for someone
yep.
by using those teachable moment to help people learn and in a way create an accountability partnership. They themselves are growing over time, and they could see that you care about them. That's why you're putting in the time to teach them, because you could all just do what you need to do. As some people said, I'm just doing my job, and that's not part of my job, right? Like, and when people talk about that, I kind of like, I cringe. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it's not just your job. And it's interesting that you point that out. Like, it's truly, leading with characters is ultimately super important to really help your team achieve the capability that they're capable of.
Yeah, and too often I don't think we see an immediate response. Like if someone turned a screwdriver and they were able to screw this screw all the way, and you could see that, okay, they got it done, right? In the character world, it's not that easy to see that you actually made an impact. Let me give you an example. And one of my students I had taught the entire semester, we're in our final exam. I was still in face-to-face at school. This is before COVID started. And this student came up to me with their final exam, handed it in, said, thank you, coach, for a great semester. I said, well, are you going home? Are you going to have a job this summer? And he said, nope, don't have a job. I said, well, what are you going to do for the summer? He said, I'm going home. I said, "You're going home, no job, so what are you going to do?" And he said, "Coach, I've been in here now with you for 4 months. You sound a lot like my dad. And my dad and I did not get along when we were growing up. So I'm going home to build my relationship with my dad."
Wow.
So I had no idea that the entire time I'm teaching him all these technical skills, right? And he's answering all the questions on the exams and the quizzes and so forth. That in reality, because I helped him understand what the character skills were, he was going home, and relationships is one of those character skills that blends right into the people skill, right? You can't build a relationship without care and respect and trust, right? But the relationship building is a people skill. And he was
Yes,
going
yes.
home to build that relationship with his dad. And so I could see like somebody turning a screwdriver to turn a screw in all the way that, hey, I had done my job. Even though that wasn't the whole point of the class, we impacted and influenced his life in a way that I might never have been able to by just teaching the technical things, right?
Well, thank you for sharing that heartwarming story. The next question I have, can you share the projects that you're working on right now, and how my audience could engage with you? I'm going to add your link to your website and things like that, but talk more about your book, Tricycle Effect, and how people could reach you.
Sure. And they can get a hold of me. But if they just go out and Google me up, I'm out there in quite a few different ways. But one of them is with the tricycleeffect.com. So if they just type out the Tricycle Effect, 3 different words, Google it, it'll come up. They can also find my book on Amazon or on Barnes & Noble, The Tricycle Effect 2.0, because I relaunched it again last November after 6 years of being out there. Or they can go to my leadership website, lmdc.us. So it'd be Lima Mike Delta Charlie.us, like United States. And they could sign up for some free newsletters. There's different free resources out there. One of them is an honor code. The person who wrote the book, the forward to my book, The Tricycle Effect, was a Hanoi Hilton POW, a prisoner of war. And he wrote a code of honor. And when I go out and talk to companies, it's amazing how many of them doesn't even matter whether it's in the commercial sector or something like a police department or a government. Many of them do not have an honor code. So how are they living with honor? Meaning carrying out character skills with their people if they have no honor code, right? And
Yep.
so Lee Ellis was my mentor through Squadron Officer School. And many years since, we've gone out and spoken together in Orlando, LA, and Dallas. And he gave me that code to be able to share with a lot of other people. So if you go to my website, lmdc.us, you can actually go and click on the free resources at the top and download that honor code for yourself to be able to use it in your own company, organization, and be able to really start to lay that foundation. And I think that's the key thing. This book is just another way of being able to introduce character to people, and that it could be your way of life. We're really trying to start a character movement across the United States and across the world right now, so people can get back to how do we get better empathy? How do we better care for one another and so forth, right? And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we're talking to each other about character skills and about ethics and things like that without shutting down those conversations, right? And so that's one of the methods that we're using, is to give out some free resources and tie together with people who have the same kind of level of desire and passion for being able to lead with character first. And I would just say this, too often we forget that character is the foundation of leadership. And we don't realize that that character is what gives us the foundation to launch into other things with leadership, like relationships and, and the technical skills. John Maxwell, actually, in his first book, Developing the Leader Within You, he said chapter number 3 was titled Integrity, an essential ingredient in leadership. When he rewrote it, now it's Developing the Leader Within You 2.0, like my Tricycle Effect 2.0. He changed chapter 3's title from integrity to character. And underneath, as a subtitle for character, he says character is the foundation for leadership. So too often I know leadership is the sexy word, right? That's what everybody likes to focus on, and that motivates them. Yeah. Character and ethics makes us withdraw, but we need to come out of our shell and actually engage better with character so that we can engage with our people and our family and those that we love and care about most, right? So if we make that character the foundational leadership, the character skills will grow, the leadership skills will grow, and the technical will automatically be there too. And we'll have that balance in the competence wheels in the tricycle.
Thank you, Dane. Really appreciate you being a guest on my podcast today, and really appreciate you. Have a good day, Dane.
Absolutely. It's my privilege. Thank you, Will, and trike on.